Hey guys, welcome. As video game creators, we have to be extremely disciplined with ourselves in order to achieve our goals and create the things that we want to create. And if you've been in this industry for any amount of time, whether it's as a hobby, whether you're part-time or full-time, then you've probably already experienced the temptation to quit your project and either start your project over or just scrap it and start a new one entirely. My name is Brandon and I have quit many small projects, but now I'm working on a more ambitious commercial Metroidvania project called Veil of Maia. So I have some experience in this area, and really, I just want to share with you guys some of the stuff that has helped me to continue to push through and work on my game, even when I feel like quitting or taking a really long break from it. I think the best place to start is to really just ask the big question right out of the gate. Is this the best game to be working on for me right now? And we need to figure that out before we can move forward. And I just want to say right off the bat, there is nothing wrong with deciding I've gone down the wrong path. I chose to work on the wrong kind of game, and now I need to pivot and start moving forward in a new direction. Thin Matrix is a perfect example. And if you don't know who he is an amazing game developer working on a farming simulator. I'm going to leave a link to his channel down below because if you don't watch him, you really should. He's very inspiring to watch. I've been watching Thin Matrix since his early Equilinox days, where he basically just used to post weekly devlogs. He's a very consistent, hardworking guy. Then, after he released Equilinox, he started working on a city building game. And I think he worked on it for about 2 years. And during those 2 years that he was working on the city building game, he didn't post quite as often. His devlogs didn't feel quite as exciting or energetic, at least to me, during that time. And ultimately, after working on his game for 2 years, he decided to quit. At the time, he told his fans on YouTube that he'd bit off more than he could chew, and he made a business decision to pause that project and start working on a brand new project called Homegrown, which is now his current project. Now, the reason that I bring this up is to point out and to really just validate the fact that there are very, very good reasons to quit working on your game. Before my wife and I started working on our Metroidvania project together, I was trying to create a roguelike game. And I did this because I thought it would be easier or more practical. But the truth was that was not the right project for me to be working on. And because making video games is an art, it can be really, really difficult to take a step back and see the whole picture because there can be so many factors and so many emotions in the mix. And for that reason, I find it very helpful to think of your project as a business that you're building instead of a game that you're making. If you were an entrepreneur, which you are, by the way, if you're making games and you're trying to make money from them, you're just also an artist. But if you were an entrepreneur trying to start your own chain of bakeries, if you started and then you realized that you really hate being in the bakery business or you just really don't like baking or whatever, it's probably going to make sense to pivot and or change your whole business strategy. You can count the number of decades that you get in this life on 1 or 2 hands, so we don't want to be building things that we don't enjoy building. So your very first job is to sit down and figure out, why do you want to quit your game? If the reason is something like the game that you're working on just feels wrong to you, or you really had no idea what you were getting yourself into at the start and now you're in it and you're out of your depth, if it's anything like that, then quitting might make sense for you. You are allowed to quit your game. It's okay. You can quit. Now, that being said, this video is about helping you to move forward and not quit your game even though you really want to. You may have dozens and dozens of reasons that make you want to quit your game, but from a business perspective, those might not be good reasons to quit working on your game. You might even hate your game right now, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the game is not a good fit for you. You may just be at a particularly boring or frustrating part of your development cycle, and it's just something that you need to get through. So how can you tell the difference? How can you tell if your game is not a good fit for you and it's something that you need to pivot from, or that you're just in a frustrating part and it's just something you need to work through? Well, I do have 2 things that you can try to help you figure that out. One has to do with how you feel, and one has to do with your past experiences. So first, try to really see your project in your mind and see it completed. You've mentally obsessed about your game 1,000 times before, I'm sure. So try to zoom out as much as you can and get a good feel for what your game is and what you want it to be. Imagine what your trailer for your game is going to be like. Imagine what your Steam page looks like if you don't have one set up already. Imagine people playing your game and really just getting lost and absorbed in this world that you created for them. Okay, so how does that make you feel? Somewhere in the mix of emotions that you're probably feeling when it comes to your game, excitement should be there somewhere. Ignore any doubt that comes up, ignore any fear that comes up, ignore your nervousness, ignore any lack of faith in your abilities. All of that stuff, feeling all of that, that's very natural, but none of that has anything to do with whether your game is a good fit for you or not. If your game is a good fit for you, then imagining the final product should be really exciting for you. Like, you want to play that game because it sounds so cool. If there's no excitement for you at all, then you might want to dig into that just a little bit, because it's possible that you chose your project out of convenience or because it felt doable or something along those lines. The second thing that you can try is to look at which projects inspired you to start the game that you're working on right now. We're all human and we all get inspired by other people's art, and we naturally see that and we want to imitate it, but put our own personal spin on it. That's just part of the human condition. You see something you really like and you think, shit, I really want to make something like that. What games out there inspired your game idea? Or which ones are similar at least? And how did you feel when you played those games for the very first time? My game is mostly inspired by Hollow Knight. There's a lot of other games in the mix in terms of where inspiration came from, but Hollow Knight was very special for me. I've never played a game that felt so magical to me before. It was such a joy playing that game for the first time. It was weird and it was difficult and I got lost and it was frustrating and I died to Nightmare King Grim like 60 times before I finally beat him. That game was a journey that I went on as a player, and I was inspired to create something that hopefully made people feel something similar to what I felt when I played Hollow Knight. It can be really easy to mentally get caught up in money and fame and game dev glory and all that stuff. But this is an artistic medium, and art is meant to make people feel things and experience things. You, as the creator of your game, you should feel inspiring things about the project you're working on. And if you don't feel any inspiration or any excitement at all about the game you're working on, then it might be time to reevaluate your decision. Now, with that being said, let's move on to the next section where we have decided, yes, I do definitely want to continue working on my game. It's a good fit. But now we're having difficulty with the thought and with the temptation of wanting to quit our game and start new projects because we're bored or frustrated or unmotivated or something like that. And I see a lot of developers asking what they should do in this situation. Should they take a break from their project? Should they start another project on the side? And when I hear those questions, what I'm actually taking away from it is, okay, I love working on my game. I want to finish my game, but I don't like how I feel when I'm working on my game. And we're looking to help alleviate some of those shitty feelings you might be having when you work on your game. And I will give you my honest opinion. However, you know yourself better than anyone else, so you should always do what you feel is right for you. Always. But with all that said, let's answer the question, should I take a break from my project? And my answer is yes, but not really. What I mean by that is, sure, take a small break. And I mean small. Really, really, really small. Really tiny. Teeny. Tiny, really small. Take a couple of days off or take a week if you need it, but I wouldn't recommend more than that. We humans are creatures of habit, but it can be very, very easy to fall out of a good habit if we're not careful. If you're on your computer and you're working on your game every single day, that's amazing. And you're doing more than 95% of other developers out there. You should be very proud. And if you're doing that, we definitely don't want to step out of that habit. However, when you're stressed and when you're frustrated, you're not going to perform as well. Take your rest and know that you're going to come back feeling refreshed and ready to kick some ass. Now, should you start a second project on the side? I don't think so. No. And here's why. The start of a new project is always the most fun part, every single time, at least when it comes to making games. Things come together very, very quickly in the early stages of putting a game together. Everything's very manageable, and it's going to make you feel very competent and like you're very, very efficient. I get a lot of dopamine when I start new projects because of how quickly everything comes together. And you're not always in this stage when you're working on longer, more serious or commercial projects. You may experiment with something and end up not even using what it is you worked on all day. Or maybe you're optimizing your code, and even though you're putting in all of this work, nothing on the surface really changes, although it's definitely a needed part of game development. Maybe you spent weeks working on a new mechanic and it got torn to shreds by playtesters. This is a part of the process. I wouldn't call it fun exactly, but these things are absolutely necessary if you want your game to be as good as you see it in your head. So what I would say is no, don't start a completely separate project. But what I would say is have something else on the side that is helping you to learn more and more. For example, right now, I'm adding a lot of content into my game, new abilities, new mechanics, things like that. So I'm in a very programming heavy part of development right now, but I am dying to get better at shader graph in Unity. I want to learn everything there is to learn about shaders. I want to be able to make them completely by myself. I'm a beginner when it comes to shaders. I just want to know more about them. But as I said, my commercial game is very program heavy right now, and I don't have a lot of excuses to be working in shader graph in my game right now. So outside of my work time, I follow tutorials and I do little experiments so that I get to learn the things that I really want to learn, but I'm not distracted during my workday. As game developers, we have dreams and we have goals, and we always want to be working towards that and not creating distractions for ourselves along the way. Having a second project on the side, that can be a distraction from your main goal. By the way, guys, if you're enjoying this video, it would mean the world to me if you could give this a like, because I really want YouTube to like me more. The beautiful thing about working on a game is there's literally a million things to do. If you're resisting working on a particular part of your game, or you really hate it and it's making you want to quit your project, then you can just switch tasks for a little while. You have art, animation, programming, level design, enemy design, sound, music, social media, marketing, website maintenance, etc., etc. The list goes on and on. So pick something else. You don't need to quit your game or start a whole second project. Just switch tasks and come back to the one that you really hate when you're in a better headspace to be able to handle it. I do this all the time with our game. I'll break one thing that I'm trying to accomplish into like 20 or 30 little micro tasks. And I'm not gonna lie, all the things in that list that I really hate and don't want to do, I'll put them right at the bottom of the list. Is that a good idea? I don't really know, but I find it very motivating and very helpful to me to have like 27 of 30 things complete, and there's really just 3 things left. Even if I hate them, it's just 3 little things I gotta do, and then it's done. I find it makes it easier for me just having most of that task already done before I do the stuff I really don't like. For me, when I start to have really negative feelings and really negative thoughts about my game is when I'm starting to feel too overwhelmed. Maybe I'm just looking at the whole big picture of like everything that needs to get done. I'm not happy with my jump physics. That needs tweaking. I need to optimize a lot of systems because they're too slow. My map system breaks every time that I create a new area, so that needs to be fixed. I have weird physics bugs. I have bugs in my boss fight. And I have like 400 to-do items in my Trello list. And it's too much. Now, this can be more of just a mindset thing where you really just need to have some mental discipline and focus on the one task at hand that you're doing right now. But sometimes for me, the overwhelm is there because I avoided too many things that I didn't want to tackle, and now they've stacked up. And now the combination of all of those things that I have to take care of is just causing me stress and overwhelm. So then in that situation, our job then becomes, how can we make this process less overwhelming? Maybe you can code a tool for yourself that makes certain tasks easier. Maybe you need to refactor a couple of things. Maybe you need to rewrite some old code and improve it. Maybe you need to sit down and fix some of those bugs that you've known about for months. If addressing any of those issues will help you with your overwhelm, then you are doing yourself a huge service by tackling that list. I want to hear more from you guys. What do you guys do to stay motivated and keep working on your game? What helps you get through the really hard days of development? Have you ever pivoted away from a project and started a new one? Did you feel like it was the right decision or the wrong decision? Let me know in the comments down below. I love hearing from you guys. Thanks, and I hope you have an amazing day.